Welcome to the Take 10 Podcast. The Take 10 Podcast is a weekly podcast dedicated to getting to know God's Word in a light but meaningful way. You can subscribe in iTunes or just go to pastoreric.org. That's Eric with a K for more information and ways to listen and subscribe. And now here's Pastor Eric with this week's episode.
Welcome to the Take 10 Podcast. It's great to be back. It's been a rough few weeks, and I appreciate your patience. All is well up here in Pine Grove, California, and I hope all is well with you where you're at. Don't forget you can listen to the Take 10 Podcast on iTunes. Click subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. Also go to www.pastoreric.org. That's Eric with a K for all kinds of other ways to listen on any device you have. Also like us on our Facebook page. We really appreciate it. Well, after a long time away, I finally kind of came across something I really wanted to talk about. And we spoke about it in Sunday in church yesterday. And I just felt the need to expand on it just a little bit. And where we were talking was in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. And it's really the story of a man who has been crippled for over 38 years. And Jesus asked this question, do you want to get well? And there's so much to this story. If you really want to see or hear what we did yesterday concerning this story, I encourage you to go to www.mtzchurch.org, and that's Mount Zion Church, and that's where we also have our Ustream videos. We also have podcasts for that as well, available at iTunes, and you can see all of our messages. But this particular message we just posted, and I encourage you to go and listen to it or watch it. And but I wanted to expound on it just a little bit. So let me read the 10 verses we have here, and then we'll get into it. It says, beginning on John chapter 5, beginning in verse 1, soon after another feast came around, and Jesus went back to Jerusalem. I'm reading out of the Message, by the way. I probably should have said that. And near the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there was a pool. In Hebrew, it was called Bethesda, and with 5 alcoves. Hundreds of sick people, blind, crippled, paralyzed, were in these alcoves. One man had been an invalid there for 38 years. When Jesus saw him stretched out by the pool and knew how long he had been there, he said, "Do you want to get well?" And the sick man said, "Sir, when the water is stirred, I don't have anybody to put me in the pool. By the time I get there, somebody else is already in." And Jesus said, "Get up, take your bedroll, start walking." The man was healed on the spot. He picked up his bedroll and walked off. That happened to be the Sabbath. The Jews stopped and healed, and the Jews stopped the healed man and said, "It's the Sabbath. You can't carry your bedroll around. It's against the rules." So essentially, what we have here is this amazing story of Jesus walking up to a guy who's been sick for a long time to the point where he's crippled, and he says this silly question, "Do you want to get well?" It sounds on the surface like a silly question, and we talked a lot about this on Sunday, but the fact is there are many people who say they want to get well, yet they have a ton of excuses of why they're not. And they get discouraged, and they give up, and they just get comfortable in their uncomfortability. In other words, they're fine with being sick. They've just adjusted to it, and they don't ever want to get better. Now, this pool, what they believed that an angel would stir up the water and the first person in would be healed. So this guy was getting passed over all the time, and that's why he had all these excuses of why he wasn't the first one there. I guess for 38 years, he was outdone by being in the pool. And that could very well be justified. I don't want to ever say that somebody with a disability should just get up. What's wrong with you? I mean, I'm not going that far. But I am going to say that I see people in my office every week who come in looking for help, and I want to help them. But yet they're strangers, and they're not plugged into a community. And I ask them, don't you feel it's better to go through this with people who can help you, support you, be there for you through the long term? And over again, I get excuse after excuse of why they don't come to church, why they don't get plugged in, why they, and they've got a million reasons why. In fact, I know people who say, I don't need to go to church to be a Christian. Well, you're absolutely right. I guess you don't. But on the other hand, just think of all the things you have to offer people, and yet you're keeping it to yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've been blessed by the family of God, and I've needed them there. And yet there are people that complain over and over and over again about their problems. They feel like they're isolated. They feel like they're alone. And you know why? Because they are. This world we're a weary world, and we get very leery of people. We don't trust anymore. And it's very difficult to tell strangers your personal problems. And I know it takes time. It does. You have to build relationships with people. It's difficult. But at the same time, when you push through that, you find yourself amongst a community that will bless you and that you can bless. Can I tell you something? If you don't go to church, can I just offer you this? If you're looking for a church, first of all, if you go to a church, don't go there because you got some great pastor who you think he really preaches a great sermon. Don't go because you really like the music. Don't go because you can get out of there in an hour and 15 minutes on the dot every single Sunday, and that makes it okay for you. In fact, don't even go just because your kids are happy there. What I encourage you to do is go to a church that you bring something to. When you sit in a pew or you sit in a chair and you're in church and you're visiting that church, ask the Lord, what do I bring here? What can I contribute here? We have a consumer mentality in this country. Everywhere we go, we're looking for what we can get. But let me encourage you, the next time you go to a church, look for what you can give. Because if you find yourself so needed in a place, you will never leave. And you will say, God has planted me here for a reason. And now I know why. Because there's other people here, yes, but they don't do what I do. They can't be who I am. That God doesn't use them the way God uses me. Let me tell you something. If you don't go to church, you are needed somewhere. There's a church that's missing you. There's a community of people that need you there. Don't stay in your house. Don't go up in the hills and worship God up there by yourself all the time. Instead, magnify the Lord with your voice and with other voices. It can resource other, you can come to church and you can be the resource that is the catalyst for seeing more and more people helped. And God has just been waiting for you to show up. And it's not going to be easy at first. You're going to go in there. You're not going to know anybody. They won't look like you. They won't act like you. In fact, I knew some people that left churches because the people weren't like them. And I thought, wait a minute. Isn't that where you should be because you're not like that? And that's what you bring to the table? That's what I've always kind of felt, that people who don't go to church, they feel they don't need it. But the fact is there are people that need them. But unfortunately, in our consumer society, we don't feel that's important. We worry our kids are too busy doing the sports, or, we've got to have our Sunday's our family day and we need to be alone. And, we're tired but God does so much through your commitment to a body of people that want to be there for you, help you, and that need you. So I'm making a strong case because I guess I just love the church so much and what it can do. And the more people you have, the more resource you have. The more people with different gifts and talents, the more you can reach other people that are not like me. I know that as a senior pastor of a church, guess what? There's a lot of people in this world that are not like me and not like me in our church. So I look for those people and I try to find what God has gifted them in. And then I try to plug them in an area and a ministry in which is their natural gifting, the bend that God has given them. And you watch them shine and you watch them flourish. I'm called not just to do the ministry. I'm called to equip people to do the ministry. And that's the most exciting part of church life for me, is watching somebody come to know Jesus Christ, have eternal salvation, have a community of people around them, and then in turn, you watch them flourish in their gifts and in their talents, and you watch them bless others. It's an amazing process that God has put together. So let me just ask you the question, why don't you go to church? Why don't you get around other people that you can help? And why go through life alone? Well, listen, that's all the time we have for this week. But I believe God will bless you. Just let Him receive what He has for you today.
Thanks for listening to the Take 10 podcast. For more information, just go to pastoreric.org. That's Eric with a K. And don't forget to go to our Facebook page and like us. Have a great week, and may God bless you.